Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to call the regular council land use meeting to order and move immediately into the land use applications, commercial, industrial, agriculture. We're into Fleetwood, Guildford.
Move planning recommendations on number 1, Madam.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move planning recommendations on number 2.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
On the zoning, move first.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move second.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second.
And all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
On number 3 on the temporary use permit, move planning recommendations.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
On number 4, move planning recommendations.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
On number 5, move planning recommendations.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
On number 6 on the TUP, move planning recommendations.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
On number 7, move planning recommendations.
Second.
And all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move planning recommendations on number 8.
Second.
I have a speaker, Councillor Starchuk, on 8.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have an issue with moving this along, but I would really like to have a better understanding that when it comes back in front of us, what the methodology of people getting in and out of this. I see that there's an ultimate road allowance that's there, but given the amount of townhouses, given where it is on the road, given on the grade of where 168th is, and how long it's going to take for the other land to be assembled that's on the north side of things, because when I took a drive by there yesterday, there's for sale signs that are there, so obviously there's some impediments with amassing that other property that's there. So I want to make sure that we have an understanding as to how long that there will be a temporary solution for in and out that's there, whether or not a traffic study can be done or not.
Okay, and Councillor, are you okay with, I'm going to be calling it forward for a public hearing. You want that information available at the public hearing?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
On the OCP, move first.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move second.
Second.
In favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Also on the zoning bylaw, move first.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
Move second.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move that public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second.
In favor? Opposed? Carried.
On number 9, move planning recommendations.
Second.
Those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed, Madam Mayor.
Opposed? And that's carried.
On the zoning, move first.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
Carried.
Move second.
Second. In favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
Carried.
Move public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
Carried.
On number 10, move planning recommendations.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Also on number 10, on the zoning, move first.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move second.
Second.
In favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move planning recommendations on number 11.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move planning recommendations on number 12.
Second. In favor? Any opposed? And that's carried.
Also on 12 on the zoning, move first.
Second. In favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move second.
Second. In favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second. In favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
On number 13, move planning recommendations.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Also on 13 on the OCP, move first.
Second. In favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
Move second.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And on the zoning bylaw, move first.
Second. In favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move second.
Second. In favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
On
Newton.
Number 14, move planning recommendations.
Second. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
On the zoning, move first.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move second.
Second. In favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
Move public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second. In favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move planning recommendations on number 15.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
And that's carried.
Also on 15 on the zoning, move first.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
And that's carried.
Move second.
Second. All those in favor? Okay, Councillor Villeneuve, before first is passed, I'll recognize you prior to second.
Thank you. Are you recognizing me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know this is part of the Orchard Grove NCP, but what I'd like to make sure at the public hearing is that, or before, that we have a presentation on the school situation in the Grandview Heights area. Just because I think that that is the issue for a few councillors to continue with the approval of development in this area, but we sort of need to know where the school board capital project asks are in this particular area, which is close to our new Surrey facility, which is very well used at this point, but I do know that there's pretty heavy impact on the school situation now, so if we can have that information available for the public hearing, I'd appreciate that.
Perhaps, Councillor, we could have that at one of the management sessions in advance of that, too, so that we've got it.
That would be really
yeah.
helpful, I think, for a number of us to be able to have that. We've talked about
Yes, we'll arrange that. I'm going to ask for motion on second then.
Okay, also move.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Woods, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will second that motion. And as you know, last council meeting, I announced that I'm not going to support any development in the Grandview area from King George to 176 and from 40th Avenue to 8th Avenue until the situation with the schools is resolved. There's a considerable amount of development in that area that's already been approved by this council, and there's no new building initiatives that have been approved by the province that I'm aware of. And I'm really interested in getting that report. And I would also like to get a sort of from planning a summation as to how much we have approved in that area, if possible, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll include that in our workshop that we're
Thank you so much,
later.
Madam Mayor.
Okay. Did I have a mover on second?
I move second.
Okay, and a seconder.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move public hearing be set for Monday, July 11th.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that is subject to the information we're receiving in advance of that July 11 date. Okay, 16, please.
Madam Mayor, given planning's recommendation, it may be appropriate to have the applicant provide some context in terms of this particular application.
Yes, there are.
Denial, right?
This is for, yes. Is the applicant or the applicant's agent here to speak to this?
Hello, and thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council, for the opportunity to speak today.
Could you just move the mic up and identify yourself, and just move the mic up a little closer?
Sarah Atkinson of Plan Van. I'm the applicant for the current proposal, which is for residential at 168. And
We're having a hard time hearing you,
Sorry.
Sarah. Could you
Yep.
speak up or get the, yeah. Thank you.
As stated in the planning report, the current proposal for residential deviates from the Highway 99 corridor plan, which is now 12 years old and perhaps does not accurately reflect the city's and the region's current principles for development and growth, which includes creating mixed-use, compact, and walkable communities. The 2004 LAP designation of industrial is in contrast to the regional growth strategy's more recent designation of the land as urban in 2011. During the last 12 years since the adoption of the LAP, the properties in the southern end of the corridor have remained dormant, despite the rapid growth of development in adjoining areas. Many people have tried to find a suitable use for development in this area without any success, and that includes the casino project, which failed due to lack of support from the local residents. The proponents have now been working on developing a plan for this site for the last year and have explored the possibility of an industrial business, but have found the site unsuitable for a variety of reasons, including the isolated location and the adjacency to a significant biodiversity preserve. Understanding the city's mandate to preserve employment lands, the proponent hired Richard Wozni of Site Economics to help determine suitable uses on the property. Richard's study found that the highest and best use for this land was residential, and the compromised location did not make it suitable for industrial business park. If the site remains designated as such, the study found that it will take 20 to 30 years to develop and will at that time experience higher than normal vacancies. With this study in mind and remaining cognizant of the importance of employment lands, the proponent team has developed the current plan, which uses the residential component you're seeing in today's application to catalyze development of two intense employment uses on their adjacent parcels. This would include a school and/or a significant commercial, retail, and office development. The current proposal has been designed to maintain significant employment opportunities in this area, while also focusing on the principles of growth outlined in the RGS. And as the planning report states on page 8, the inclusion of the school and/or the commercial, retail, and office development does address the fundamental planning issues associated with residential development in the corridor. Oleg from Pacific Land Group will now speak about the particulars of the plan and the surrounding neighborhood. You will then hear from Richard Wozni of Site Economics, who will walk you through the land economic study prepared for the subject parcel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Oleg Verbenkopf with Pacific Land Group. So, Your Worship, I'll start with, I'll speak to the planning context, then I'll talk a little bit about the regulatory framework in this area, our proposed land use plan, and the mix of uses for the block that we're proposing, and finally our request of council once Richard has his portion. So, Your Worship, while the regional plan is for mixed employment, or for general urban rather, the mixed employment designation of the OCP allows for industrial, office, institutional, and commercial uses. The Highway 99 corridor plan that you see on the screen as well further defines these uses for business park and for commercial type uses. So what does the general urban designation for the region, what does it allow? So it basically is intended for residential neighborhoods and residential centers that allow for shopping, for services, and for various institutional uses. So to align more closely with the RGS, we will need an OCP amendment for a portion of the block to allow this application to move forward.
I'm sorry, could you just say that again? I didn't quite hear you.
Okay, so So this application, to align more closely with the regional plan, which allows residential neighborhoods, we would need an OCP amendment for a portion of the block,
Okay.
for the residential portion. So again, so why does residential work here? Well, it's probably a more visually appealing gateway location to Surrey. By supporting an aging population with master rail main units, it will reduce the pressure on schools. By providing for local housing for Campbell Heights as the industrial area grows. And also, it'll support development of existing commercial areas, not only in Grandview, but for the portion of commercial that I'll speak to in a moment. So, in conjunction with the residential and the multifamily proposal, we're prepared to provide a commercial component as well as a zoned and service site to support a private school on give or take 5 acres of this block. So the employment benefits of these uses would mirror the employment numbers in a mixed employment designation. So the land use options that we've been working with, option 1 that you see on the screen looked at a private school on the south side of the site with multifamily on the north side. The second option that we looked at then replaced the school with some commercial use and a commercial component on the south end of the site, or the block rather. So the third option, or the preferred option that I'm speaking to this evening, so this includes both a school component, a private school, and a commercial use on the south side. So this plan was developed by including input from private school representatives and as well as a neighborhood commercial scale type users that would locate on the south end of the block. So we're currently working with a private school group who wish to build a private school to serve the South Surrey market, but require the initial support from Council in order to make a commitment and move forward to plan a school of this size. I just want to spend a moment looking at the environmental side. So one of the early steps that we looked at was to meet with local environmental groups. We in fact had 3 or 4 groups out on the site where we talked about the environmental features that exist here and what they would like to see in terms of preserving or adding to the Fergus Creek Biodiversity Park. So the Little Campbell Watershed Society believes that residential uses up against the park would provide better stewardship of the environmental area. It would also reduce any potential for contamination from industrial type uses. And they've given us some correspondence to support that. So why a business park isn't particularly suitable here? Well, again, this is a location that is at a gateway to Surrey. The users that Richard might speak to in a moment that would prefer to go here would be for outdoor storage, which we don't think is an appropriate area at this location. There's ample demand for large industrial scale development, but again, higher end users would go to Campbell Heights. There's little suburban office demand, particularly in an isolated location here, unlike 24th Avenue and Grandview, where we're seeing more of the office type demand. And as well as I mentioned, industrial uses may pose some harmful effects to Fergus Creek. So the issue was also absorption periods, which Richard will speak to. And another point that when speaking with some of the neighbors, they prefer a residential commercial mix and have no objections to a private school being located here. So I'll turn it over to Richard for a moment.
Okay, and I'm just mindful of the time, Richard, so If I could just ask you to move it along as best you can.
Will do. Your Worship, Council, Richard Wozni. And very briefly, the conclusion of the study was that the economic impact of both land uses, residential and or industrial, is approximately the same. However, this is based on only 5 years of absorption required for the residential, as opposed to a 20-year period for industrial. The most, even though they were the same, the most recent proposal, option 3, includes retail, hotels, schools, seniors, which gives it a slightly greater economic impact than pure industrial. The values for both that were done, the study was done a year and a half ago, they're both up strongly, particularly residential. Essentially, what you have here is a short-term decision versus a long-term decision. Support for residential, absorption period only a few years, spur other developments in the area in the short term. The limitations of industrial, absorption period closer to 20 years, not an ideal location for a business park. This is very isolated at the southern end, cut off from everywhere else by Fergus Creek Park. It would experience higher than average vacancies. It's relatively small for being so isolated, and very little demand for office space. The industrial land shortage that applies across the region, it is primarily for large and medium-scale warehouses, not so the type of use that would go on a 20-acre site down on South Surrey, on the south end of Highway 99. And I want to thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. What is the wish of council?
Your Worship,
I see we have...
Could I just wrap?
Oh,
if you don't mind.
Quick wrap.
Sure. So, Your Worship, we'd like to ask Council to refer the application back to staff to work with us and the public to prepare a more detailed land use plan for the block, and such that it will incorporate both the multifamily, the school, and the commercial land uses, and based on the concept, the third concept that I discussed today. This is really important for us so that we can get the school planners, the people who want to actually build a school in South Surrey to cater to this market. They need a commitment, or to be shown a commitment from Council that this is possible, because the amount of investment that would be required to commit to a school is probably somewhere in the $50 million range if you look at something like Southridge School.
And is it public information on who the proponents might be relative to the school?
We have two parties. Both have given us some correspondence. Both are looking at the area. I actually have an email with me today, and I have a letter that wasn't in your package, but we have with us, which I'm more than happy to provide at this meeting, if you wish.
Okay. Councillor Hayne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And shall I make the motion first and then speak to it, or?
So
there's no motion on the table.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll make the motion to send this back to staff.
Second.
And then if I could speak to it. Thank you, Oleg, and the rest of you for explaining this in detail to us a little better. Of course, what's before us today is strictly a residential proposal, and there seems like there has to be employment opportunities within these lands, and you've indicated that with potential for private schools and hotels and other opportunities, which is encouraging. And certainly, from my perspective, I'd like to see something come to us that does have all those components in place, so that we could consider it as one larger package, rather than just, from my perspective anyway, considering just the residential piece on its own. And I wonder, I know that someone indicated, maybe you did, that there was some general support from the Fergus Creek community for residential. I can imagine that would be certainly a lighter footprint from their perspective. But I would like to see, if possible, some public consultation with that community to come back and really get a good understanding of what their feelings are when we come back. But I'm certainly not opposed to incorporating some residential into. It's a large tract of land, and I realize that there's multiple owners and that sort of thing. So I'm not opposed to residential in there, but I would like to see a sort of a comprehensive proposal from my perspective as a way of providing some guidance to staff as we send it back. Okay,
thank you, Councillor. And you're talking about it being contiguous with the commercial component as well. Thank you. Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I've been looking at this proposal in terms of what it offers. I think that, just to start off, is that I really do think that there is a market out there for a private school. That being said, I think that one of my experiences on council is that for something like this to materialize becomes very difficult, and there's some certainties that an operator would want. That being said, what would be very important to me, again, Madam Mayor, is that any proposal that would come forward really would have to be in sync and have to be on a parallel basis in terms of any residential that would be there as an ancillary use to support that private school. So that being said, I do appreciate the fact that this Highway 99 corridor local area plan was completed, I believe, in 2002. I would further suggest that when I'm looking at the plan itself, we've got a lot of mixed-use commercial, industrial, and residential. And I really wanted to point out the Morgan Crossing project. That particular project, when it was first conceived, or at least on the land use, it was conceived as commercial, I believe. And at a further date in time, I believe it was 2006, that had changed over to mixed residential and mixed commercial. So I think that project itself has been very successful. So that being said, I think that we've had a lot of changes on the Highway 99 corridor. We've got a new 16th Avenue overpass that we didn't have previously. We are looking to create a new overpass on 20th Avenue. There have been significant improvements on 24th Avenue, so we've had some significant east-west investments that have been made in that particular area. And I would further suggest that the world's changed. We've had some significant changes in the world, in particular in Surrey, when it comes to employment lands and affordable housing. So, that's something that I would like to see, but certainly at the same token that I think what needs to drive this application is that we keep with the spirit of the application in the sense of the employment lands that need to be generated.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Villeneuve.
I guess what I need is clarification on what we're referring back, because I think staff was very clear in their report to council that this is a significant departure from the OCP. It's clear that the school district doesn't support this application at this time, considering the kind of infrastructure pressure that they have. And, it does reduce our employment land, so whether it's short-term or long-term, but I guess plans are made to be a bit more long-term, and the kind of generation of residential development that's going on in that area now is beyond precedent. So at this time, I'm not particularly favorable for the residential component of this project, because I think right now we don't have the infrastructure to support that. And I think that I also really believe in following plans at this point when the city is developing at such a rapid rate. Though that report says, for 20 years we probably won't see any activity on that land, I simply don't believe that because of the shortage of employment lands in the region and will be in the city. So personally, I've told the applicant at the beginning I don't support this change, but I think the council needs to be clear on what you're referring back to the planning staff, because they're asking to work with you to be able to comply more with the OCP and not necessarily to incorporate all these other uses that you're proposing. So if I could have clarification on what the motion is, maybe from Councillor Hayne.
Your Worship, if you wish, I could address the councillor's comments.
No, I think I'm going to ask you, I think that the motion from Councillor Hayne was quite clear, to work with the applicant relative to all of those uses, including residential, and to make sure that the neighborhood was part of that process in terms of their support for that around the Fergus Creek area and the biodiversity area, and to include in concert at the same time some the commercial uses as you've described. Is that fair to say that was a resolution, Councillor? And so that's before us now, and I think, if you don't mind, sir, I'm going to say we won't be hearing more from you.
Thank you.
Okay. And that clarifies it for Councillor Villeneuve as well, so we know that that's not where you're going to support.
Thank you.
Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm troubled by this proposal simply because the issue with the schools in the area, although there was talk of a private school, the fact of the matter is, as Councillor Gill has pointed out, it's affordable housing. And somewhere the children are going to have to go to school, and I want to suggest they're not going to be going to a private school. And we have heard nothing from the applicant with regards to the school situation, and they should have been in the public package, it's in my package, and it's not good. So I'm tending to lean towards Councillor Villeneuve's comments very heavily, and but I haven't made up my mind yet. So, but the school situation really troubles me.
Put your hand back.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm good. Councillor Steele.
I just want to make it really clear when I'm hearing this that if it passes and this comes through, that I want to see the school, the name of the school, who's going to purchase and run the school, and we want to, I don't just want to see something come back which ultimately says we're going to start with the residential and we'll carry on with the other later. I think we need to hear the plan and it with definite information with regard to the school. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Starchuk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that it's been said a couple of times, but I think it needs to be as a package. I think that there's some benefit that's there with regards to protecting the Fergus watershed, but at the same time, I'm not sure of how well that the plan was taken a look at in 2002 with regards to that preservation area and how much it was taken into consideration at that time and how it kind of made this area a little bit of an island. So and the last thing too is hopefully when it goes back to staff that we can see staff's numbers as to what type of mixed employment numbers that would have been conceptually generated back in 2002 as opposed to how they're conceptually generated today.
Okay, we'll include that. Councillor, would you consider that a friendly amendment? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to call the question. All those in favour? Opposed?
Opposed.
And that's carried. Number 17 on the King George Boulevard.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Good. Thank you. Opposed? And that's carried.
On the zoning, move first.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move second.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
Move public hearing set for Monday, July 11th.
Second.
And in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we have South Surrey, number 1. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this? This is also a... Could you identify yourself?
Certainly. My name is Maggie Coca. I work with Applin & Martin, and we're the agents for this application. Hazelmere Golf and Tennis would like to expand their existing residential community. They have a long history in the Hazelmere Valley in the city of Surrey, as they were established in 1962. Over their 54 years, they have supported many charitable events, including such events as Kids Sports and Sources. The purpose of requesting to expand their residential community is to support their golf and tennis clubs. They will demonstrate the benefit to farming, to fish habitat, to employment, all while providing some housing options in this part of the city. Like to share with you their vision for what they'd like to do here. They wish to create a high-quality, active living community. They want to increase the housing options in this area. They want to provide some mobility challenge options through wider hallways within their homes, reinforced walls for being able to attach hand grips, as well as wheelchair accessible options. They want to be able to support local businesses, theirs, of course, but also the Douglas community, Campbell Heights, which is within about 3 miles of this site, as well as increasing the area for active farming. They also want to improve habitat within the Little Campbell watershed. The owners have spoken with senior staff, and they understand the complexities, not only in asking for your approval, but also asking for Metro Vancouver approval. They understand the financial responsibilities of paying the DCCs while supporting their infrastructure costs. And so I have a few graphics that I'd like to walk you through so you can understand the elements of the project. So if you put graphic 1 up, we've organized this around 4 main themes: residential, commercial, habitat, and agriculture. The first graphic that you see is just giving you the context of where this site is. It illustrates where the existing Hazelmere Golf and Tennis is. It shows where the existing residential area is, the Douglas neighborhood, the Pacific Highway crossing, as well as Campbell Heights Business District. When you look at Douglas itself, the housing options there are somewhat limited. They're small lots, they're smaller townhouses. The Hazelmere expansion is to provide an alternative to that, and I'll explain as I go on what that alternative looks like. We see this as approaching a balance of housing options, which is supported in the city's OCP. If we take a closer look at the residential component and switch the graphic, on the top left corner, where it has site context, it's broken the site into the various components that's being proposed. And so in this particular area, we're looking at doing a suburban residential expansion to the golf course. You can see that the residential is completely outside of the AOR, completely outside of natural habitat, and is clustered near 0 Avenue and 184th. The 2 renderings that we've had drawn of the site, which unfortunately don't show incredibly well there, but they do show how this fits into the natural landscape, that it will increase the city's tree canopy. Right now the site, or the hillside here, is very lacking in trees. In fact, most of the trees, with the exception of a handful, are all clustered within that natural habitat. And that the rendering shows how we protect and improving on farmland. As requested by Council when we came before you in the past, we explored the option of doing 2-acre septic. We looked at geotechnical analysis, environmental, and agrologist. Working with the Little Campbell Society, they support our proposal of doing a suburban residential expansion on sanitary services. Moving on to the third graphic, and just speaking about the commercial, or the commercial or the benefits with regards to business. So we all know that residents support businesses, and businesses need residents. Hazelmere Golf and Tennis currently employ about 150 full-time employees, as well as the indirect employment that comes from that. They want to create a vibrant golf and tennis clubs. They see this as a way of encouraging active living as well as employment. They see it as a way of supporting the youth. We all know we need to give them distractions for those electronics, as well as giving them an opportunity to work. The Pacific Highway crossing is going to attract employees and creating a diversity of housing in this area. So it supports that business center that's there. And as you can see on the graphics, we're not even 3 miles away from Campbell Heights. And so there's the opportunities to support that key business area in this part of Surrey. This will provide a balance of commercial and residential taxes. It will also enhance the agricultural land base, and I promise I'll explain that in a minute. Moving on to the fourth graphic. We think we have a really unique opportunity to provide not only a habitat, but an agricultural benefit together. We see that in particular with the habitat, that this area is the beginnings of Coon Creek, and unfortunately it's characterized by really heavy vegetation growth. It's just not been well maintained. It's not that it's been well maintained, it had a historical agricultural history that's created a lot of blackberry growth in the area. The channels don't have a lot of good base flow, and there's definitely no fish passage in this part of the world. What we would like to do is take all of those historical drainage ditches that went through the agricultural area and consolidate them into a single high-quality channel. That channel would be along the toe of the slope. It would catch the drainage. It would direct it towards new constructed wetland ponds and provide base flows into Coon Creek. This idea has been worked with the Little Campbell Society, and they support it. They think this is a great opportunity. We also propose to have an aggressive tree planting. As I mentioned, there was not a lot of trees in this area, and trees will assist in the habitat. And also the proposal of a suburban residential will also avoid the potential for septic concerns in this watershed. So the benefits for the habitat: protect water quality and base levels, improve buffering, and remove barriers. We also see, of course, the opportunity to contribute to the green infrastructure network. Now moving on to the agricultural piece. So those channels that were being consolidated into a single channel provides an opportunity to open up a substantial area of the agriculture. Instead of having a bunch of drainage ditches bisecting, we can actually have a more open, consolidated piece. We're also proposing there is a piece of the natural habitat in the center of the agricultural area that we propose to bridge. This would allow access back and forth better, as well as the movement of farm equipment. The soils currently are about a class 4 or 5, and they have concerns with regards to excess water, undesirable soils, as well as soil moisture deficiencies in the dry season. We propose to improve the soil capacities, increase the organic matter, as well as control the excess water. This would be done through improved stormwater management. There's also the proposal to include 2 acres in the ALR. So you can see that underneath the hydro corridor, as it touches Zero Avenue, that's not in the ALR at this time. And so that would be added in and provide a secure road access into that agricultural area. And then lastly, there is a piece of the golf course that's not used for golfing that would be rezoned to A1. So therefore expand the agricultural. So to summarize with the last graphic, we put together a table, and we like to joke it's a bit of a pie chart. So the table summarizes what it is in the proposal of the full application. Residential on 48 acres, or 37% of the site. Farming, improvements on 38 acres, or 30% of the site. Habitat improvements on 12 acres, plus the retention of 12 acres. And we've checked the numbers. It is 12 and 12. So that makes it 18%. And retaining the golf course on a slimmed-down version of 15%. We're asking to be able to prepare a plan that complements the Douglas housing options, that expands Hazelmere's existing residents, supports aging in place, benefits business and commercial activities, benefits agriculture and habitat, all while fitting into the natural landscape. Since the application was submitted in 2014, the project has explored in detail the options for septic.
Can I just ask you to move it along? We're running really short on time here.
Absolutely. I'll go right to my final statement.
Thank you.
We're asking to work with staff on a suburban residential expansion. The owners understand the need to fit and contribute with Hazelmere. They want to build on the existing community and infrastructure, and they are respectfully requesting that the consultant team prepare a suburban residential plan and sanitary strategy for this development. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Maggie. Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I'm just looking for some clarification. The report indicated that the soils are not ideal for septic. Does that mean septic does not work on these lands?
It's not ideal because of the topography and the soil conditions. Could you get septic approved in some way? Yes. Is there potential for nitrates and fecal coliform to work their way down the hill? Yes.
In terms of the site itself, I know that there's a multifamily townhouse, I believe, project to the immediate west, I think, of the golf course. Correct?
Yes.
Do you have any context in terms of how that materialized over the years? I'm just still having some difficulty how something so dense was able to create itself at that particular location.
Yeah, it was a townhouse development that was to support the existing Hazelmere site. It has its own private sanitary service that also services the elementary school on the north side of 8th Avenue. And it was approved, I don't know the exact date in which it was approved.
Thank you.
And Councillor, just for clarification, that townhouse site and as well as the Hallsper Elementary School have all private pump stations, but they pump into the sanitary sewer or the sanitary force main of the city, and it's connected to the Douglas area.
That's what I understand,
city
yes.
Sanitary sewer, yes.
Mm-hmm.
There is no private wastewater treatment on the site.
No.
Councillor Villan.
I guess my question is that you're proposing to fund and run a new sanitary sewer to be able to develop this project. Is that correct?
We understand that we need to fund our infrastructure. What exactly the sanitary solution is, we don't know at this stage.
I guess my question is, and my concern is, as is planning, is that there has not been any extensive planning for this area because it's designated rural and agricultural not only in our plan but also in Metro's plan.
Right.
So my concern is that this project sounds great. I believe it's premature because there hasn't been planning in the area. So I'll ask you directly, is there an opportunity then for other people and landowners in the area to connect to the sewer line that you're proposing? So are we opening up this area for development?
I think that there's more ways than one to be able to service the site. Whether there is an option to service just this development, yes. Is there an option to provide infrastructure for the future? Yes. We haven't had those detailed discussions to date, and so I can't answer specifically how this site would be serviced. There's many options of being able to do it. The existing system that comes out of the townhouse and the elementary school could be expanded to support this, or it could be a piece of infrastructure that could support future development as well. That's a discussion to be had.
My concern is there hasn't been planning in the area. My concern is that 136 houses more in this area with the existing infrastructure is the project's premature in my mind, so I can't support it at this time.
Right.
I appreciate all the efforts that have been made, and I think I told you at the beginning that those were my concerns, and planning's report is very strongly against this project at this time. So I respect their work and their opinion and therefore won't be supporting it at this time. But I really am concerned about the pressure then for the rural designation in the Hazelmere Valley. It's another reason I won't be supporting it at this time. But thank you.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you.
Unless there are any other questions of the applicant rep, okay. What is the will of council? Councillor Gill.
Madam Mayor, just reflecting on the past, I recall about 11 years ago when I first got onto council that VFW made a similar application to the east of the site. And, I had a discussion with staff, and I understand that the hill will eventually go residential. I assume that. If I'm incorrect in that assumption, I'm looking for some clarity. But I think that where I'm troubled is to better understand what those timelines look like in the context of what we are currently doing in Grandview as a whole, and where those absorption rates are in our city. So I'm really wanting to refer this back to staff, and I'm wanting to look at some clarity in terms of when this would hit the clock in context to whether or not these lands in the east of this site do have any merit in terms of having any residential components. I know that the recommendation from staff was to suggest that if we're going to be referring this back to staff, or if there's merit in the application, that we should be looking at all the non-agricultural lands, that portions in Hazelmere. So, Madam Mayor, I'm really just troubled in terms of the application itself, wanting to better understand where this project in context to the entire Hazelmere would be with respect to, where it would be on the clock in terms of residential development in the future. I think that's something that's really important to be able to understand in the context of current capacity that we have in the city in terms of absorption and lots, etc.
Was that a motion to refer?
It is a referral motion. I'm sure that some of my colleagues may have some additional clarity items, but certainly I'm looking for additional clarity in terms of the septic in relation to the soils and whether we can support a sewer system in context to what's being said in terms of the soils. One other issue that I do have, Madam Mayor, in terms of this site is that I do understand, and Mr. Planner, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the current applicant or the current owner would be permitted to develop the lands on 2-acre parcels. Is that correct, Mr. Planner?
True, Madam Mayor, that's correct.
So my issue, Madam Mayor, is really if the lands are permitted to provide for one home for every 2 acres, is that really the best land use? And I'm really having difficulty in trying to decide either or. And I'm not even sure that the applicant or the owner would want to make those decisions or not. But certainly when I'm looking at the context of what we may be faced with in the future, it is very concerning.
I think we heard the applicant speak to the Little Campbell River and the 2-acre piece being difficult for them to accept. So I'm not really sure. I'm going to take that as a referral back, but I'm not sure what the referral back is all about. So let's see if we can get some clarity. I'm Councillor Hayne. Sorry, did I screw that up?
There we go. Thank you. And I'll second the referral, and I'll see if I can add a couple of pieces from my perspective too. I think the application in and of itself and how it stands now has come an awfully long way in terms of some of the things that the applicant is willing and wants to do with the local community, with the farming community, and that's evidenced by the fact that AVSAC looked at it a couple years ago and recommended a denial, and then looked at it again last year and recommended support because of some of the agricultural pieces that the applicant is prepared to work with. But really, from my perspective, I would like to see if this application ever does go forward, is that it be a completion of the Hazelmere Golf Course residential community. There's townhouses there now to the west of the golf course, which are very successful, and they resell in minutes. Maybe that's just reflective of our real estate market, but it's very successful. And what's proposed here is half-acre lots, which are estate lots, which I would see being viable for the next 50 or 60 years in the form and function that they're being proposed at now. So whatever servicing, whatever sewer connections might be proposed, I'm not interested in seeing this having a whole lot of latecomer agreements going all the way along 8th Avenue and extending that, that residential corridor, I see this as being the completion of that golf course community. And if it is the completion of that golf course community and those additional things could be provided in terms of habitat restoration and agriculture, I think in and of itself I could see taking a hard look at a project like that, but not as the beginning of an extension for opening up that area. And if that area obviously ever starts to open up, then I would expect a full NCP process to come into effect, but I am not interested in that NCP process at this time at all. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Starchuk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I echo those comments as well as far as having the end user or having there any expansion. I think that we heard it that there is the capacity there to service this area. That's alone. I have to speak from two positions, one from our agricultural committee that we have that speaks in support of this proposal that's here, and to see the inclusion of 2 more acres into our ALR as opposed to an exclusion, which is a joy to see. As well as there's a lot of property that's there that has the potential to be made available to some of our new or younger agrarians that are out there, and specifically also from an environmental point of view, providing additional flow to Coon Creek so it actually gets into the Little Campbell at times during the year where it's at its critical moments, which is in the summer. So I support this going back with the understanding that they can come up with some sort of an agreement that supports this area alone.
This area alone, not going out farther into the valley. Thank you. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I very much echo the comments of Councillor Hain. I really, Madam Mayor, to the east along 0 Avenue, I really do not want to see more development happen in that area in terms of like half-acre lots. I agree that if it's an extension to support the golf course or in terms of completing the build-out of the golf course, I would like to have a look at that, and I will support to refer back to staff.
Okay. Calling the question on, I'm sorry, Councillor Steele.
I just want to support going back, as has been suggested by Councillor Hain, and say that I think estate homes, another place for some estate homes in this city are really necessary. I think this will be a great addition to our city, but I too am not interested in seeing it spread throughout the valley, just here. So that's what I want to see come back. Thank you.
Okay, on that basis of referral, all those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
And that's carried. Moving quickly on to...
Move planning recommendations on 2, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All of those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
On bylaws, move final on 1.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move final on 2.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And that Mayor and Council be authorized to issue development variance permit 7914003000.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
There's one more, Madam Mayor. There's no one more?
No.
So didn't
Madam
get
Mayor?
that.
Sorry, the Council be requested to amend the West Panorama Ridge Local Area Plan to redesignate the site from suburban residential 1 acre to suburban residential half acre, and move final on that.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Also, Madam Mayor, on H1, I believe that the Council is requested to amend the East Newton South NCP to redesignate the portion of the land from townhouse 15 UPA to single-family lots. That's 1A.
Seconder?
I think you need to say that faster.
All those in